You're listening to the Catholic Nurse Coach podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Haugen, wife, mom, nurse, and Catholic life coach. The mission of this podcast is to coach Catholic women who work in healthcare to follow God's plan. Welcome, everybody. And today we have a special guest with us, Denise Jelinek. And I'm going to read a little bit about her, and then she's going to share with us and give us some great tips and tricks to help us to lose weight, especially as caregivers and busy moms. So, as a convert, Denise Jelinek is so grateful to be Catholic. She is a wife of 20 years, and after years of infertility, is blessed to be a mom to her two teenage boys. Although once a binge eater, overdrinker, and chronic people pleaser, she is now a Catholic health and weight loss coach dedicated to helping women grow closer to Christ and pursue peace as they learn to live free of excess weight, emotional eating, and all the things that distract and lure them from with artificial comfort. So, welcome, Denise. We're so happy to have you here.
Thanks, Nicole. I am so stoked to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit like how you got started and how you became a weight loss life coach, but specifically like for Catholic women.
Okay, well, the shortcut Cliff Notes version is prior to the pandemic, I was working part-time as a personal trainer, and I've had my own personal training business since 2005, and everything was going swimmingly until the gyms shut down. And then after that, I started to get a taste of being at home, and I absolutely loved it. Our home life was way more peaceful. And I thought, how can I do what I'm doing by helping people get healthy, but do it virtually? And that's when I thought, well, I'll just become a wellness coach. And at that time, I thought that I would be helping people with all the things, not just with exercise. I would be helping them with diet, stress, sleep, including exercise, and just sort of be this holistic coach for them. Well, that's when the Lord tapped me on the shoulder and he said, Denise, I want to be fully integrated into every part of your life. And Nicole, I was like, oh no, he wants to be in my professional life. And I literally thought that would be professional suicide, but I wasn't willing to say no to him. So at that point, I decided, okay, well, I'll just help people take care of, again, all of the things, the stress, the sleep, the exercise, the nutrition, but put a Christian spin on it. I, at that point, was not willing to be Catholic publicly. And as I started this business, I started to see other women who had that boldness to just be out there and Catholic. And I just kept feeling him calling me more and more to that. Well, so there, I already decided I would be Catholic publicly. Everything would be great. But I did not expect to be a health and weight loss coach in the way that I am now until he really hit me upside the head. And in my struggle with binge eating and over drinking and chronic people pleasing has been a very long journey. And I'll add on to that, that my husband and I have also survived an emotionally abusive marriage. So we just had a lot of stuff, man. We had a lot of stuff. And it was a very private journey. I had never been public about all of that stuff that just wasn't so shiny. And the Lord said, Denise, I need you to go find my hurting daughters and bring them to me. And I was like, no, don't sacrifice this beautiful like persona that Denise Jelinek had created because I was health girl, right? Like on the outside, I had it together. I was teaching you how to eat clean and to like deal with your stress and sleep and exercise. And he just wanted to break me down and show that part of my life that was so low, but I only came out of it because of him. And that's what he wanted. He said, nobody's going to come to you unless you show them what I have done in your life, what I, the Lord, has done in your life. And so at that point, I just became super vulnerable and it was really scary, Nicole. And I give you so much credit for you were one of the first people that joined some of my earlier groups, that Renew group where we really addressed our attachment to emotional eating or disordered relationship with food. And just so at that point, the Lord said, you got to show them everything because that's what's going to bring them to me.
Mhm.
And at that point, I said, okay, I'm a Catholic health and weight loss coach, but we're going to do this in the way that the Lord wants to do it. And what a Catholic weight loss coach does is two different pieces. So in the difference between Catholic weight loss and my philosophy versus conventional weight loss is number one, we start by treating ourselves the way the Lord would, right? So we're not just going to be kind and nice to ourselves when we meet our goal. No, we're going to treat ourselves the way Jesus would, tending to our needs and supporting ourselves and being encouraging and uplifting through the whole process. And the other piece of that is we're not just going to diet to lose weight. We're actually going to address the things that stand in the way of us from losing weight, which is usually maybe stress eating, maybe high cortisol levels with excess stress. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but addressing the real cause of, or what's really holding us back from losing weight.
Yeah, which is so true, right? Because I love hearing how like you're like, oh, God was just like, nope, you got to let me in. You got to share this with other people because it is,
Hard.
yeah, it's so hard. It's scary. You feel so vulnerable. And I think a lot of like when you work in healthcare, the secular world just says that doesn't belong here, shut that out. And so you feel so isolated and lonely. And then you're denying a part of yourself that you want to share with others, but you don't know how, and you don't want to be judged. And so then oftentimes you do turn to food. And especially in healthcare, when there's food everywhere all the time, there's always treats, there's always things to eat. But what are some kind of, first off, misconceptions that people have about weight loss?
Yeah, I love this question. The number one misconception in weight loss is that you need to diet. Okay, so go with me on this. If what's standing in the way of you losing weight is knowing what to eat, then a diet would work. The better question to ask yourself is what's really holding up my weight loss? What's standing in the way? And once you can identify that, then you can problem solve and work on that. And see, that's the work that women get to do with you is you're such a great coach where you can start to detect, hey, what's really standing in the way and address that.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
just a little plug for coaching in general is a coach meets you where you are, sees where you want to go, and just removes all the obstacles. And
Mhm.
Nicole, that's what you do for people. And often in weight loss, what's not holding us up is knowing what to eat. What is holding us up is the things that we'll talk about in terms of the struggles and obstacles that typically come up in healthcare.
Yeah, which is great, right? Because we all think like, oh, if I just did this diet or if I stuck with this, oh, I should cut out carbs, oh, I should do this. And it almost puts even more pressure on yourself. And then you get in that spiral where then you feel guilty and shame because you eat those things when, oh, I know I shouldn't, right? So, yeah, so that is a really big thing. And so what are some simple things that you tell women that you can do to help yourself in your weight loss journey?
The first one is to just start tuning into their own needs. I know that sounds crazy, but it is the easiest place to start. You can be nice to yourself now. You can be kind to yourself now. Asking the question, how can I support myself through my stresses? Is probably the best thing you can do for your weight loss. I was just speaking to two different clients and they were telling me all about their clean eating and they use these natural ingredients and all this and that. But the truth is that these women have such high stress in their lives. When we have such high stress, our cortisol levels are so high. And when our cortisol levels are so high, our insulin levels are high. And when we're we have high insulin, we're in fat storage. We cannot lose weight when we have such high insulin levels. So it doesn't matter what diet you follow, what clean eating you're following, the natural ingredients. Women, the easiest thing that we can start to do is to recognize when we're stressed and find a way out of that through your coaching, through the mindset that you teach people so that they can start to live with their cortisol levels at a reduced level. And that way they can get actual traction if they do want to change their diet. And I know everybody hates that answer. Everybody hates thinking that lowering their stress is the answer. But the only reason why people hate that answer is because they think they have to change their circumstances to reduce their stress.
Mhm.
And you and I both know that the only thing causing them stress is their mindset.
Mhm.
And they can very easily take control of that mindset and within a few weeks, really drastically reduce those cortisol levels by being able to learn the techniques that you teach people.
Yeah. So can you give like an example of how, because we all think, right? We have human brains. We all think that, okay, like I have this stressful circumstance, a stressful situation that needs to change in order for me to be happy or in order for me to be less stressed. And the reality is, right, like as life coaches, we know that circumstance or situation can stay exactly the same. And it's the way that we approach it and we look at it and the things we think about it. That's what changes. So, do you have an example at all about like a situation where you've worked with somebody or coached somebody through like, wow, this and this and this needs to change before I can lose weight? Or maybe
Yeah.
even just in your own life.
Yeah, let me give you just some simple examples. Like I can think of one woman in particular who just found that she thought her life circumstances were just so overwhelming and that there was just so much stress. Okay, so then we would dive into, well, what feels stressful? And this is just one example. Dinner time felt just really stressful for her. And so here's the craziest thing. As we dove into what feels stressful, and that's the question that your listeners can just keep asking themselves. Well, what is so stressful about this? And their brain's going to be like, well, so this is my one client. Monday nights are so busy. We have so much going on. It's so hard to get dinner on the table. And I like to grocery shop on Mondays. So let's just take Monday for an example. We were able to start looking at, and there's a couple different ways that we can attack this as coaches, but one way is that we can put on so we just like to look at what glasses does our client have on. And her glasses are, this is so stressful, Monday is too much, dinner is just so much. Okay, that's fine. But that's going to keep you stuck and spinning out with those glasses on. We could also then put on our problem solving glasses. And that's where their client can start asking themselves, what feels so stressful about Monday? What's so stressful about this? How can I make it easier? My favorite question to ask myself, how can I make this easier? Like there's gotta be a way to make this easier. So we can look at, for my client, she was grocery shopping on Monday, bringing in all the groceries, unloading them, and then trying to cook dinner. I mean, I'm sure everyone listening to this can be like, that's silly. Why don't we just do grocery shopping on a different day? All right, that's one way you can make it easier. What's another way you can make Monday nights easier? How about a crock pot meal that you throw together on Sunday? That's one way to make it easier. And so, where I don't want to give the illusion that all you have to do is change your mindset and things get easier. Yes, that is very, very helpful when we get down to specific things.
Mhm.
But there's also this openness that I would ask for all of your listeners to start considering, this openness and this willingness to just consider, could my life be easier? I bet there's a way I can make this easier. How am I making it harder?
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm simply making it harder because I believe it should be different.
Mhm. Yeah.
One example is in my personal family, I have a 17-year-old who has some behavioral special needs. I have a 14-year-old, and then I have my husband. And when I expect everyone to come to the dinner table singing Kumbaya, my life gets harder.
Mhm.
But if I can just recognize, I just want some butts in the seats around the table, and people are going to act like they're going to act, and other people are going to respond to them the way they're going to respond. And that doesn't mean I'm a bad mom. That doesn't mean that family dinner's a wreck. That doesn't mean anything. And trust me, I've had to come a long way to get there, where I can stay calm watching the shenanigans. I might decide to referee. And if I want to referee, I do it calmly. And that's my choice. But
Mhm.
I'll tell you, when I used to come to the dinner table and expect everyone to act a certain way, or I was worried about my husband coming home and having shenanigans and him thinking, family dinner is such a mess. She can't even control the kids. That's when I would overeat my dinner.
Mhm. Yep.
But that's the difference between my, so a calm mind does not stress eat. A stressed mind stress eats. And so that is the benefit of really working through, well, what feels stressful here?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about having a coach is being able to see an outsider's perspective, being able to say, "Oh, like I don't need to control everybody else. I just need to control myself." And that gives you that power back and it's so freeing and it takes you out of what you think should be and puts you in the present. And it's just so wonderful when that happens.
Yeah, and I think the piece, since we are a Catholic podcast, I think the piece of that, let's take it back, is that we stop playing God in everybody else's life.
Yeah.
Is that we say, what is keeping me from accessing the Holy Spirit's strength, from the Holy Spirit coming through me and feeling that peace? Because the truth is that we are only connected to the Lord when we feel peace in our hearts. Every other time, there's distance.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's so important for us to recognize and address. I like to call it detect when we're separated or stressed, reflect, find out what's going on, and then protect ourselves so that we can actually and protect ourselves with mindset or with other problem solving like strategies, like a crock pot dinner, like not having expectations of our family to be, you know, the Waltons. Do you even know what that is? You probably don't even
Oh
know.
yeah, yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we protect from the way we think things should be.
Yeah.
Stop playing God in everybody else's life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. So what would you tell women or what advice would you have for them who work in healthcare who are like, "Hey, I don't get a lunch break, or if I do, it's maybe 5 to 10 minutes and then I go to the bathroom and I don't have time to sit down and then there's always snacks in the break room or people." A running joke is always like, you get pizza if you're a nurse, you get pizza for like reward well done, right? And so there's all this food all the time. So, what are some things that help women with their weight and their health surrounded by all of that?
Yeah, I love that you asked this question because everyone listening, get a piece of paper. I have so many ideas for you. Okay, and what's so cool is I was just giving a talk with Catholic Charities teachers, right? I think teachers and nurses are two of the professions that are short on time and they're not even allowed to eat
Yep.
or go to the bathroom.
Mhm.
It's so weird. All right.
Yep.
Okay, so for the first thing, we don't have breaks. Um, you guys, when you work and you're working like typically like what are the shifts? 8 to 12 hours? Typically 12?
Yeah, most of the time, most people work 12-hour shifts now. Some have 8, but
Okay, so let's pretend like it's all 12 hours. I
mhm,
want you guys to start thinking of this as an athletic competition. And when we have athletic competitions, part of making sure that you do well, because you guys, 12 hours is a lot. You're in it, so you don't think it is, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not in it. And I can see that the work you do for 12 hours is a lot. And so when you think about it as an athletic competition, one of the key elements to success is what you do the day before.
mhm,
It is very important for you to nourish your body well and hydrate well the day before. Just know that's super going to affect the following day. Think of your work days as these intense competition days, and that the food that will really sustain you and make a real difference in how you feel that day is what you did the day before. Okay? You've never heard that before. Just trust me. And I suggest that as you hear me say things, your ears and your intuition will say, you know what? I think I'm going to try that. I think I'm going to try that. And just be willing to experiment with things. Okay. All right. So when I say nourish the day before, you guys know what good nourishment is. You know what works for you. I mean, we can get into specifics, but really I find that enough hydration and enough protein are really, really key. And the number one thing with having sustained energy and weight loss is really to keep your blood sugar stable. And all of you nurses know that. And so keeping blood sugar stable, like let's say if you do totally dig certain carbohydrates, just make sure that you're eating them and pairing them with a protein. Okay. So if you're like, I love potato chips, not a problem. Just make sure you're not eating potato chips by themselves. That you have a pretty substantial amount of protein, like a turkey sandwich that's pretty loaded. That would be really awesome. Smoothies, freeze them, and then take them to work. And then she could keep them on the desk and they would just, she could just sip here and there. Okay. Liquid nutrition, also drinking enough water. Not even want to say lots of water, just enough. Because I think we can all really get into the coffee and Diet Coke
mhm,
trap, Denise Jelinek included, and recognizing that you don't have to give up any of those things. You can keep your coffee and Diet Coke habit. Just be aware that it's just going to require a little more attention to hydrating with water. And what's so cool is that you can even back end it on the back end part of your day, or just do it the day before.
mhm,
Because what you don't want to do, and this is what happens with marathon trainers, marathon trainers, marathon runners when they're training for events. What they're doing is they deplete and they don't recover from that work out, and they deplete and they don't recover. And so what you would really love to do is to make sure that you go into your work day like hyper nutrition, hyper hydrated, and so that it's not depleting you. Your work days aren't depleting you, especially if you have multiple days in a row, because that's gonna feel like you got hit by a truck. And so just being aware of that concept that your work days are like intense competitions or intense training, and that they will require recovery. Number three, high protein on the days that you work. I just recommend high protein like all the time, but how you can do that, find 3 or 4 snacks that you love that are high protein. That said, some snacks that I dig are things like beef jerky is great. RX bars, but I'm sure there's a lot of great bars out there that you enjoy that can be eaten a half at a time, a half at a time. I mean, and give yourself permission to do simple, easy things. Like it doesn't have to be, some gourmet cut up an apple with almonds. Like maybe you just need some grab and go things. And I really suggest that not that you can't have natural foods, which is so awesome too, but just give yourself permission to not do that. If it means that you can find your nourishment in more packaged things. And here's the thing is that maybe for a month, you just a month or two, you just start working on finding some high protein snacks that you can have at work that are easy to eat, that you really enjoy. And then in the next 2 months, you can find on what are some more natural things. But it's fine to just start somewhere. That said, I would always recommend having a stash of snacks in your car. Inevitably, you're going to make your lunch, make your smoothie or whatever, and forget it. So just make sure you have some snacks stashed in your car. I would say stash them at work, but I bet other people would eat them. So don't do that. Okay, now the other thing that I find for anybody who is short on time is they don't plan for their vulnerable times. And so work is stressful enough. Work is stressful enough. And if you can find 3 or 4 snacks that you dig, now we're just talking about not getting a break right now. I'm going to talk to you about being surrounded by food in just a second. I also want you to be aware of vulnerable times. The 2 times that I find are most vulnerable for people is when they get off work and then after the meal that they eat when they get home. So have a snack on your way home from work. We have all eaten half of our dinner while we're making dinner. We've all done that. And then you sit down for dinner and you feel horrible about yourself. So plan a snack on your way home. And that's fine if you want it to be fast food. I don't care. Nicole, my 2 food rules are that you eat food that you love, that you feel good about. So if you want to drive through somewhere and get a little something as a snack on your way home, that's cool. Just make sure that that's what you feel good about and that you're intentionally doing it. I used to have a client who would drive through Burger King every night and get a Whopper Junior, and that was what she wanted for dinner. She was an empty nester. She hated cooking, and she felt so good and loved her Whopper Junior. Isn't it funny?
Thanks.
You can do that as long as you plan. So I really suggest that people plan what they're going to eat on their way home from work so that they're not starving if they're making dinner. And then I also recommend that people plan a nighttime snack. So many women will be like, I shouldn't eat after 7. I shouldn't eat after, fill in the blank. That's fine if that works for you. But the mindset and thinking I shouldn't eat that usually leaves a lot of women going around their kitchen and stuffing a lot of things in their face that they quote shouldn't have. Instead, I would rather see my clients plan to have a dish of ice cream and a dish of chips if that's what you want. Just plan it and then you'll love it and you'll have something to look forward to. Okay. So do you mind if I just keep going?
Yeah, go for it.
I have a lot of stuff. The other thing, you guys, is a new concept that you probably haven't heard. And that is in healthcare, I want you to start pacing yourself. Yes, of course, there are high stress times. Yes, of course, there are times where you can't take a break. Yes, of course, there are times where you are needed. It is an emergency. Of where there are breaks. Where can I refill and restore? There's likely downtime that we're just not utilizing efficiently, that we might just be chatting with people, which is fine. but that might not be the restoration that some of your listeners need. And that might mean 3 minutes of total quiet with sitting on a toilet, with your clothes on, listening to a podcast. It might be finding a window and just looking out of it and just breathing for 3 minutes. But I want your listeners to recognize that there are not fire drills their whole shift. There aren't. There are pockets. And until we start tuning into those pockets, they won't be revealed. Because, and I say that because of the high intensity times, there will need to be recovery in your nervous system. And if you don't take that recovery, guess where you live? You live in stress. And guess what a stressed brain does? A stressed brain stress eats. And so now let's talk about being surrounded by all the stuff. Okay, being surrounded by all of the snacks and the food. I want you to decide the first thing that I would recommend is that you just decide what you want to do. If you know there are always going to be some sort of like something, probably every shift, 100% of the time there will be something. You just get to decide what you feel good about. What that means is you might say, if you work 3 shifts that week, you know what? On one of my shifts, I'm going to totally eat whatever I want. Cool. And the other 2 shifts, I'm going to bring my own food. Cool. Maybe I'm going to have one snack each time I work. Cool. Maybe I'm going to have one piece of pizza every time I work. I would just suggest you decide, what do you feel good about? Because I find that the 2 kinds of foods that most people regret eating are impulsive, if they feel it's impulsive, or if they feel pressure to eat it. So you can remove that impulse and that pressure by just deciding ahead of time. You can also, now here's the other thing, is then women will say to me, but I didn't know they were going to have pizza that day. I didn't plan it. I brought my lunch, and now what? Okay. So at that point, you're feeling pressure or impulse. I just suggest you go to the bathroom, calm your brain down, and just decide, I brought my lunch today. Do I want to have that? Or do I want to have the pizza? And so by giving your brain 3 to 5 minutes to calm down, you have now removed the impulse and you've also removed the pressure, because now you are deciding how you want to handle that. And let's say you decide, and I want to tell you, there's no right answer. You might say, I want the pizza. Fine, not a problem. You want the pizza. There's no right or wrong answer. But the answer is, I find you will not have regret if you choose not from impulse and not from feeling pressure, from feeling more intentional. Okay, now here's another thing. Find an exciting substitute for you. I once had this teacher who would get to the end of the day and she just wanted chocolate. All right, but she didn't feel good about eating chocolate. All right. So the question was, and this happens in a lot of office buildings or, nurses too, where there's the treats, there's the sugar, there's the brownies. How can I get what I want, but in a way I feel good about? So we just started to explore some options with this teacher. How can she get this chocolate, satisfy this chocolate feeling without feeling regret about it? So she came up with 3 different options that she would do. Number 1, she created a trail mix that had some chocolatey stuff in it, but it didn't feel like it was too much where she felt regretful about it. Okay. She also found this, I think it was like a Fiber One bar or some sort of like brownie that was supposed to be a quote healthy brownie. And I'm not talking about nutrition info here. She just felt good about it. Right? It felt good to her. Or I think she also had like a protein bar that sugar for her. Now listen, so you might say, Denise, a sugary protein bar, will that really help me lose weight? We're not worrying about that right now. We're just trying to help you feel good about what you're eating and find a substitute. Because chances are the cookies and the brownies are definitely not going to help you lose weight. So let's find some substitutes on the days that you say, I don't want to have the cookies and the brownies and the stuff, but that you don't feel deprived or left out. Because we do want you to feel fun. We want to support you. We're just trying to be problem solvers so that you can enjoy your life and feel supported and taken care of and seen and needed, and seen and heard, that your needs are met. Your needs for wanting to fit in are met. Your needs for wanting to have something fun and special for you are met.
Mhm.
Okay. And then finally, remember that a stressed brain stress eats. And if you start to feel stressed when you see all the food, asking yourself, wait a second, what do I really need here? Do I really just need like 2 minutes of sunshine? Because you guys are on those floors, especially if you're in a hospital. Like, do I just need to find a window to get some sunshine in my eyes? Do I just need to go like listen to an awesome song on my AirPods for like 3 minutes? What do I really need? And the cool thing is that you might not meet your need, but by simply asking yourself, what do I really need? Like if you could say, I just really need a break, but even if you can't take a break, your brain will start to look for ways that you can get a break, even if it doesn't feel possible in that moment. Just recognizing that is exactly what you need, that is your authentic need.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I hope those are helpful.
Yeah, those are super helpful. I love how you're like, because I can already hear like my listeners be like, wow, she doesn't know my stress at work. I can't get a break. But I love how you're just like, just invite yourself to put on like those curiosity glasses and just get curious because there are pockets of time that you can go put in headphones or go look out a window. And like we all have these stories that we tell ourselves of like, no, this is how it is. But when you start to get curious, you really are like, oh, maybe I do have time for this. Maybe I can see what I need right now. And that's one of the biggest things you've taught me is to just pause and be like, what do I need right now? And even if it's a nap and I can't take a nap, I know that hunger or that food isn't going to fill that need. Like I'm really just tired, so food's not going to help with that. Like I mean it might boost up my energy levels a little bit short term, but certainly not eating like a brownie is going to help with that. Protein might help with that.
Yeah, but even if you choose to eat a brownie, at least you knew I ate the brownie because I
Mhm.
needed a nap and I couldn't get one.
Yes.
You
Yep.
just put yourself in so much more, you're more control. And to the point for all of your listeners who say, my life is so stressed, she doesn't understand. I don't want to say I understand, but here's what I do know. I do know that the Lord would not give you the family you have, the job you have, the life you have, if it required self-destruction, self-neglect, and for you to carry excess weight to get through this life.
Mhm.
He would not give you this if there weren't a way that you could do it peacefully.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's going to be easy to get peaceful because we live in this world, but I just want them to know that when we follow the way the Lord wants us to live, we can't look at our lives and be like, oh, yeah, I do have to live chaos. Chaos is my only choice. It's not.
Mhm.
It wouldn't be. I mean, and I don't know for certain, but that's what I know about the Lord is that He doesn't want us to live in self-destruction to do the work that He brought us to do.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's so true. So a lot of times too, like often people think I just saw somebody post online today about how, they are working a different shift now and they're like, so for me, for hospice, right? Like you spend a lot of time driving to people's homes and then you're at their house. Like there's not a lot of movement. Where if you work in the hospital setting, you're probably walking around more and getting more movement in the day. There's a lot of healthcare jobs where you sit a lot of the day. And so a lot of us think, well, in order to lose weight, I need to be on a rigorous exercise program. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Is that true or not?
False. Yeah, it goes back to the number one misconception in weight loss is that you need a diet. If lack of exercise is what's holding you back, then I would say, yeah, you do need to have a rigorous exercise program. But I don't believe, honestly, usually the women that I'm working with, what's holding them back is not a rigorous exercise program. Usually it's just something much more simple, at least as a starting point. So I'm not saying, next year, or I'm not being more active would be a good thing. I'm not even saying being more active isn't a good thing, but that's not what's going to really get you great traction on your weight loss efforts. If that's not what's really standing in the way, like I said, it's usually a lot more simple. Places that I would have women start is to look at where they're not feeling peaceful about their food. What feels kind of off about my food? What am I regretting about my food? Where am I seeing myself overeat? Where am I stress eating? And I know, like Nicole, this is where you can really help people identify what's really standing in the way. Where's a good place to start?
Mhm.
And a good place to start isn't going to feel hard. It's
Mhm.
going to feel like you're ready to do it. It's going to feel simple. It's going to feel gentle.
Mhm.
It's not going to be hours at the gym.
Yeah. And I think that kind of ties it back to what you said like last about, God wouldn't give you all these things if it felt so hard and you couldn't do it. And a lot of the women I coach are always like, "Oh, it seems so simple." It's because it is. Like I really think that God's way is always it's not easy, but it's simple. It's very simplified. It's very calm and peaceful. Like that's his presence, that's his voice. And so we jump in there, we get all, we add all these other things to it. But really, when you break it down, it's very simple.
Mm.
So what do you have coming up in your program?
Yeah. So what's super exciting is today on Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, I'm doing a workshop called Weight Loss Over 40, What's Really Holding You Back? And what's so exciting about this is kind of what you and I talked about already today, is that what's really holding women's weight loss back is not a diet, it's not having enough willpower, and it's not exercise. But there are three things that are holding back your weight loss, and I'll be revealing those in my workshop. So if you can't be at the workshop live, not a problem. There's a replay, and you can go to weightlosswiththeholyspirit.com and get signed up for the workshop.
Awesome. Yeah. So I will post Denise's social media handles and the website in the comments below. And again, go and watch that workshop and take away more great tips and weightlosswiththeholyspirit.com. And thanks for joining us, Denise. Any other comments or anything?
I think what I want to say is if weight loss has felt hard for you, it's not because you're doing it wrong. You just haven't known where to start. And I think today you see that there's just many more options. And the mindset piece is huge. So I hope that listeners reach out to you, that they can really find so much more peace and freedom with their food and all of their lives.
Yeah. Yes. Great. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming. Again, you can find Denise at weightlosswiththeholyspirit.com. You can find me at catholicnursecoach.com. And I'm praying for you, and let's go change our world.